Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ongoing Mastery, Presenting and Speaking, the podcast and the coaching session and the conversation. And today we're with our friend Sarah Atlee, who is a quilter and an artist and an all around amazing person. And we're going to do a mini coaching session and kind of brainstorm some things and talk about her art. How are you today?
Oh, I am thrilled to be here, and I am just excited about what I'm going to learn and what anything that I might be able to share with your listeners. And I'm just really thrilled. Thank you.
Fantastic. So let's talk about what you want to go on podcasts and you want to kind of share your work. What's your experience been? Have you done it before? Have you not? Like, what has been your previous history with that?
Yeah, I have done several podcasts. I found it a really enjoyable experience, and I would like to do that a lot more. Some of them have involved video, some have been audio only, and really they've just kind of been all over the map. For the most part, people have found me who have podcasts and invited me to be on, which is great. But I am also trying to be proactive about offering myself to podcasters and saying, hey, I might be a good fit for your audience. And would you like to do this? So I've had a little bit of experience so far.
Great. So, what we were going to talk about today was kind of the way to best position yourself to be a podcast guest. And I'm just going to give you from my experience of having done this podcast and a previous one and also working with friends who do it as to what strategically I think would be great. So the first thing is, whose audiences do you want to get in front of? Do you
So you're asking me
Yeah,
this
so I'm
now.
asking you that. So that's my question.
Okay, that's a great question. And my answer is going to be pretty broad because, like you said, I'm an artist. I'm a quilter. Quilting is my medium, and that is a fairly universal human experience.
Yes.
So I could be talking to anybody from like healers, entrepreneurs, other fellow artists. I don't have one specific niche that I'm shooting for, unless you want to count like human beings as a niche.
Okay. So then let's go for the differentiator that you have over other people that I know that have done quilting. Because when
Okay.
I spoke with you about your art, you actually described it to me in a way that the people I know who do quilting, they're sort of assembling a collage, but you're going way beyond that. Can you tell people about what your process is and what the goals are behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an improvisational quilter, and I was doing this before I learned that there was a name for it. And it was really funny when I found out, like, oh, improvisational quilting is a thing. It's sort of like for you cat people out there, if you have a box and you put it on the floor and like the cat just has to get in it, they're compelled because like the box is so cozy and it fits just right. So improv quilting is not something that I invented. It's not brand new. Quilting has existed in human society for millennia, but it's a little bit different from what we typically see in American quilting culture. And just to give you an example, what you and I might think of as a quote unquote traditional quilt is likely to be something that is made of blocks that are all alike and then put together in a grid formation that is basically symmetrical. And there might be some play with the different colors of the fabrics and everything, but it's probably planned out ahead of time. Now, what I do is I take a collection of fabrics, probably in a bunch of colors that I like how they go together. And I don't know what the quilt is going to look like or how big it's going to be, but I just sort of start in the middle with cutting and sewing pieces together, and the composition evolves as I go along.
So when you're making a quilt for someone, what is it that informs you as an artist about what is it that you take from your client and put into the quilt?
Well, what I like to tell people is quilts are a messenger. They're a vehicle for human emotion, and they're storytellers. So everybody has a story to tell, and this might be a story of a personal life experience that you have had, or it might be a story about how you love somebody, a friend or a family member, and you want to wish them well or mark a big life milestone like birth, marriage, graduation, first new home, things like that. And you have a story to tell, and I am going to help you be the storyteller. So I have a
Okay.
conversation with clients about what is the quilt for? How is this meaningful for you? Is it going to be for another person? Describe your relationship with that person. What do you love about them? What do you think is most interesting about their life? And then I kind of start with colors and textures and go from there.
Okay. So you just said, um, I actually had it and I should have written it down the second you said it, which is right before you said, what is this quilt for? Which is the storytelling. So
That's right.
you're storytelling using a physical medium.
That's right. Exactly.
So what I would do if I were in your shoes, and certainly as a podcast host, what I would welcome is if, say, you decided you wanted to be on my podcast and someone else's podcast and someone else's, and you looked at our audiences and what our themes are and so on, and said, "Oh, I think that would be great." If you reached out to me and said, "Here's your theme, here's how I tie to it, here is how I'm unique, and here is one value your audience can get from me," bang, 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 like a bulleted list, that would right off the bat make my life so much easier.
Okay. I love that. That is so concise and descriptive and to the point. I appreciate that very much.
And have you had people on webinars or done podcasts yourself?
No, I have never been the creator of webinars or podcasts.
Okay, so I would say that another thing that would be make you like the ideal guest is I happen to have Kelly. Most podcasts don't have a Kelly as a producer. Most of them
Hmm.
are doing it themselves. And when I was a co-host back in the day, I was in Kelly's shoes, and I did not do a great job of getting the guests and figuring it out and tracking it. So there was lots of balls in the air. So if you can be extra on top of over communicating, like, okay, it's this day, great, what time? Okay, is it on camera, off camera? Do you need me to have, are there questions you would like to ask? Like, lead with that if they don't give it to you, because
Hmm.
for the people who are kind of chasing squirrels, that will really help, because it means that basically you're coming and they can just kind of hand it to you, instead of
Sounds
it
great.
being, like, okay, we're going to have this moment. Because when I bring people on, it's a chemistry moment. But if I have not talked to them before, I'm not sure how that chemistry is going to go. And so
Yeah.
it might be great. But in the previous life, I had events where I had people come on for interviews, and they were all mostly great. And there were one or two that just died. And these were live. And
Hmm.
I don't do live anymore for just this reason, because live on a camera going, okay, alrighty then. So my next piece of advice will be, you might be the person who has to ask yourself the questions. It might be that your host, usually the host is an outgoing person like me, and usually they're like, "Oh, I want to talk, let's go." But sometimes there's things going on. And if
Hmm.
there's that moment of, then if you could queue up, "Hey, by the way, your listeners do X. Here's one of the things I think they might want to know."
Okay.
You've just saved that person's bacon on air.
That's
That is,
brilliant.
wow, like, so
Yeah.
gold. So
I love that because like that not only is that a way for me to be proactive and be a good guest, but it's a way for, like you were saying earlier in the pitch part, where I say like, this is your audience, here's what I do, here's how I'm different, and here's what I can offer. Then like I'm actually bringing that to the table during the recording.
yes, yeah. And if you have visuals, um, I would plan for the visuals going wrong. Like I
Good
would
point.
I would build that in, like,
Hmm.
automatically, like, have the visuals. But if, let's say, just not loading, then it's like, that's fine, no problem. We'll talk without it. Or have a link that you can drop in the chat to bring to your website and
Okay.
direct them there. Like, have a backup plan. And
Hmm.
we're on the podcast and my dog is helping. Thank you, Angel. So that kind of thing would be really, really good. One thing I've started doing in my presentations in at events that I'm actually going to start doing online more is QR codes. So
Oh,
one thing you could do is, if you have a slide deck and you want to bring people to a very specific page, and let's say the URL is a little longer, well, giving out the URL and be like, okay, it's Sarah Atlee / da, 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 it's like, eh. But instead, you could put up a slide with a picture of one of your quilts and a QR code, and say, okay, point your cell phone at this, your camera, that'll take you right to the website. Take you
Wow,
right
that
to that
is so
page.
clever. That is so clever. I love
So
it.
anything that makes it easier, but any of that stuff you do, please always plan for it not to work and what you're going to do when it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I will say if it's a mission critical, like if it's a live event, you might want to see if you can also log in on your phone as a guest so that
Okay.
on the off chance that your Wi-Fi goes down on your machine, you're still online and you're
Nice.
still
Yeah.
with them and you can actually text them, or at least have their phone number so that you can text them back channel on the off chance like your power goes out,
Mm-hmm.
like somebody hits a pole outside
Right.
and boom, you go dark. You want to be able to get the message out right away and not have it be what happened. So just think in terms of all of the ways in which things can go wrong and then try to plan for a few of those. And that's kind of my biggest advice. And then my second biggest advice is if you can have fun, which you will, and relax and kind of just be in the moment, then that will be so much nicer no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know about you, but the thing that I'm finding challenging when I see other things is I was watching a podcast recently and everything went wrong technologically, but I was sitting
Mm.
there going, yes, mwah, because they handled it like they were like, oh, that's not working. All right, we're going to try this. That's not working. Damn. Okay. And they just like they didn't get the, oh my God, I want to die, which is what you're feeling inside, but you can't do that on camera because it
Mm-hmm.
makes the audience feel bad for you. And as soon as they feel bad for you kind of killed it.
Yeah. And I want to keep that living, that spontaneous energy present in
Mhm.
anytime I appear in a podcast or a webinar, anything like that, because like you, I've listened to a lot of podcasts, I've watched a lot of webinars, and I've seen things go wrong. And I've seen it when the guest who comes on just is this kind of there to deliver their talking points rather than
Mhm.
actually like genuinely have a conversation in the moment, like you were talking about.
Yes, and that one that's an excellent point. I know you don't do that because you and I've talked a bunch, but certainly advice for anybody that's listening. The most important part of any presentation is whoever your audience is, not your message. And if your message is more important than your audience, make a video. Like
Great
seriously,
point.
just
Yeah.
make a video because then you get your message congealed, you can deliver it the way you want it, but you're not missing the fact that there should be people responding to you. Yeah.
Hmm.
So what kind of things do you want to get from a podcast? Do you want to get clients? Do you want to get exposure? Do you want to get all of it? Would you like to get a gig at an event?
Rather than a gig at an event, I at this point in my career, I'm looking less at career paths that require me to be in a specific place and time, and I'm looking more at things that I can do more from my home studio. And this is not just since the pandemic, but it's also due to other factors in my life that just working from home is just much easier for me. So I would love to get connected with potential clients. That really is the ideal outcome. But
Mm-hmm.
even aside from that, I would love to be able to talk to new audiences about contemporary quilting, about how quilting might not be what you thought it was, how there are other kinds of quilting, and how quilting is just an art form, it's just a form of human expression. So all of that stuff would make me happy.
Nice, nice. Then I would lead with fabric art rather than the word quilting. Um, I would lead with human connection, communication, fabric art, artist, that kind of stuff. And then say, oh, by the way, my medium is quilting. Are you surprised? Because as soon as you say quilting, it's almost like a box forms in my head
Yeah.
of what I expect. And then when I talked to you before and you were explaining your process, I was like, oh, I don't have this down at all. So I would really love to see like you kind of surprise people with, I'm an artist that works in a fabric medium. I work in a physical medium to create physical experiences of an emotional state for people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about how that works. And by the way, did you know that this is called quilting? Kind of like more than your grandma's kind of thing. And
Yeah,
I
that's a
think
very
that
good point.
would be a lot of fun. One thing that would be fun is, do you have any videos of you going through the stages of creating a piece?
Mm. Not specifically, no. I have a lot of photos of process that could potentially be turned into a video, but I don't have any recent video of my process.
Because are you on Instagram?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have videos up on Instagram?
Yes. And I
Okay.
also do, this is something we haven't talked about yet. I also do live streaming from my studio on Twitch.
Oh, okay. All right. So when you live stream, what is it that you're doing?
I'm sewing. So I have a camera at my sewing machine. I have a camera at my cutting table where I cut pieces of fabric. And I have a camera. I just got another one for my ironing board. I'm like going maybe a little cuckoo with this, but I love it. And then I'm also using the camera that you're seeing me on right now, which is my desktop computer.
Okay. And are you talking through what you're thinking, or are you telling them how you're assembling, or both?
Both of those things. I'm talking through the process, and sometimes I answer technical questions from other quilters or other people who work with fabric, which I'm always happy to do. But I'm also talking through my thought process, like, I like this, I don't like that. This doesn't really have the energy I was going for, so I'm going to do that instead.
Oh, see, that's what I was thinking,
Okay.
is that's wonderful, because that's exactly the, hey, do you know what this experience would be like? Here's a 30-second intro. And if you like it, you watch the next video in line and kind of pull them in that way. Because
Yeah.
especially if that 30-second video is like one of the ones in the middle, and then you pull them to the series on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, look, does this feel right for you? If it does, let me come tell you the story. Because I
Yeah.
just love the idea of the fact that you're doing storytelling, but you're doing a physical medium for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that so much. So I'm trying to think of all the ways in which you can kind of showcase that with folks. And certainly on a podcast, I know that we always have a smaller window in podcasts, but what I'm doing with you, sort of bringing on and doing just a live coaching brainstorming session, maybe you'd want to do one of those, is have a session where you could, somebody, once you know them and you've been on their podcast and like, it's an
Mm-hmm.
established person you're comfortable with, you could say, hey, offer one of your listeners that we can go through, and I can ask them some questions, and I can kind of create on the air.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And that is something that I've kind of been looking for clients who feel comfortable with me sharing the process in a public way, so that
Mhm.
that can tell other people, here's what the process is like, here's how you would be involved. Here are the kind of questions that I would be asking you, and here's the results.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's because that's why I'm doing this, is to show people kind of the conversation I'm having with you, what it's like for us to converse, what it would be like
Mhm.
for me to converse with them. And I think your process, I would love to see that in action. Like I would happily go on YouTube and watch you walking somebody through, all right, let me ask you some questions about your mom. Okay. So, okay. All right. So these colors, da, 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 and kind of the energy of that, and the okay, these fabrics, and how does that communicate? And oh, really,
Mhm.
what about this? So these shapes, and whatever it is that you're bringing to that, but
Mhm.
just having their emotional storytelling experience physically manifest. I could not love that more. I just think that's wonderful.
I love this idea, and that is very, very. I think that's a great direction. And knowing that you who have not actually seen my process before, and you being interested in seeing the process, I love that, and that is something really good that I could follow up on.
Great. Great. So I hope this was helpful.
Very.
Um, good, good. Because I really, I like when we talked originally, it was like, oh, you don't really need any public speaking stuff. Nope, you're good. You
Well, I
know,
appreciate that too.
yeah. But
No.
like when we talked, it's like you've already got the camera presence. You're already talking to the camera, which is that's a huge thing. That's a huge
Okay.
thing. Usually people are doing this. And for the
Mm,
people on audio, I'm looking off to the side because they're talking to their notes. They're not talking to the
right.
person. And it's hard to make eye contact when you're not making eye contact.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that's a little weird, is to mentally know that you're connecting to people through your camera
Hmm.
is an odd experience, but you've already got all of that.
Okay.
So that's why when we were talking, I was like, I'm trying to think of a different way in, because you've already got the communicating with people in this medium down, and that's one of the first hurdles is
Okay.
being able to do this as opposed to the face to face, because the transition. How long have you been doing the virtual work with people?
Um, let's see, like most other folks, I started getting used to Zoom calls during the pandemic. During that time, I also had the experience of playing Dungeons and Dragons online with a group of friends, and we were
Cool.
using video as part of that. So that was like a crash course.
Awesome.
And yeah, and I had been also watching people live streaming on Twitch. And so I started to think, oh, this could be something that I could do there too. So over the last
Nice.
like 3 years or so, I've gotten acquainted with this medium.
Yeah, no, you're definitely you've got a stage presence, you're natural, you've got the energy. You've already got all that. Like that's good. Your lighting is decent. You're not massively backlit and looking like some hostage video, which is about a third of the people I see.
Oh, I don't want, that's not the vibe I'm going for.
Oh
No.
no, no. I mean, it's really it's horrible, because it's one of those. It's like, okay, the first thing is you got to be lit from the front and the sides. Like you can't be lit from the back.
Yeah.
But I love that you said the D&D thing, because I'm actually on Discord playing. My husband's written some RPGs, and
Oh,
we play
cool.
test them on Discord, and
Fantastic.
it's just a hell of a lot of fun, because they're actually based on the Amber series of
I'm
not
not
of
familiar with
books.
that. Oh,
So they're
okay.
fantasy books of essentially a godlike family that can go and warp into different dimensions more on will, and they can kind of shift worlds and all of that. And so you're one of these people that has this bloodline, and so you
Mm,
can change into different dimensions, which means there's a lot of storytelling in the play. And it's
yeah.
fun because you're doing something and they're like, okay, well, how do you warp out of it? It's like, well, I'm moving into a place where, and then you have to kind of mentally figure out, what is it that I'm creating here? And you're creating it live in the moment. It's fun.
And again, there's that storytelling element, like you
Mhm.
mentioned. There's that. How do I use my words and my voice to create an image in your mind that you can't see with your eyes? Yeah,
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
fascinating. Love it.
So,
Well,
yep. So go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you for giving me advice that I really need right now, because I'm at a place in my career where I'm really trying to level up, really trying to expand my audience and kind of trying to get to that next level. And you've given me some great ideas that I can work with, and I appreciate that so much.
Thank you. So, if I really appreciate that. And how do people find you? Like, where are you on the internets? All
Well,
the
I'm
places.
easy to find. You can Google me, and my website is my name, sarahAtlee.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram. Like I mentioned, you can find me on Twitch, and you can get links to all of those places from my website,
Okay.
sarahAtlee.com.
ATLEE.
Correct.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
I
And
appreciate you. Thank
I
you.
look forward to when you have one of these, send me the link and I'll share it with everybody, and then you can come back on and we can look at what your final, creation was. It'll be
Fantastic.
fantastic. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
And I'm gonna